Got to get the old spigot bearing out. One of the jobs I've got behind me on the daily is the clutch has been slipping for about 1,000 k's in it now, so I haven't been towing or anything, but as soon as you start going up a hill you can see the revs climbing, so it was pretty obvious that the clutch is on its way out. Don't know if anyone's ever changed a transmission, like pulled a transmission out in a 4-wheel drive before, but the trans is pretty heavy because it's got the transfer case attached to the side of it. I have done it before using workbenches and jerry-rigged a setup to be able to get the transmission out, but I figured it was time to treat myself and get a proper transmission jack, which is what I've got in the box behind me. I'll get this one unpackaged, I'll get it all built, and then we're on to the clutch. Thread was a bit dirty on this one and it just didn't want to start square, so I've just tidied it up with the file just to put the threads back on it, and then I'll just run a tap through just to clean it all out. These bolts that come with it are absolute garbage. The threads are so full of crap, even the head isn't properly formed, so rather than keep trying to persevere to get this to go in the thread and damage the thread, I'm just going to go down to the local hardware shop and get 4 new bolts. But yeah, this is only a pretty cheap one. I didn't want to spend a fortune on one, but this is the sort of shit you got to deal with when you get cheap stuff. And I'm back. And I got a new bolt. So that's the old, well, this one's still good. It's not the one I modified, but bit of a difference between the two. See if this one fits. Done. So apart from that one bolt being a bit dicky, it actually went together pretty easy. So I'll put the link up in the description of where I got this one. They are actually based down in Albany, but they ship everywhere. It's one of those things, they're pretty well the same as what you get at most of the other Chinese retailers, Vivo and all those sort of things. But for a home handyman sort of job, they're fine. The other ones I looked into, like the King Chrome ones, were about $1,000, and it was a bit more than I wanted to spend. Like this one was $450, so literally half the price for something that I might use a couple times a year. I'm happy to deal with one bolt. It was a bit shitty, it cost me $5 for a new bolt, so that really wasn't the end of the world. But I'll get stuck into the Triton behind me and give you a bit of a run through of basically how I approach a job like this and what to start with, and basically from start to finish we'll get a new clutch put in this thing. One of the first jobs that you've got to do that is quite often forgotten about, and to be honest I've actually got the car up in the air before and started working on it and then had to bring it back down, is you got to undo the shifter from the top, because when you go to pull it through, if you've still got the shifter attached at the top, it won't actually pull through the boot. Then you've got to re-support the transmission or climb up on a ladder. It's a lot of stuffing around. So always remember to undo the shifter before you get the car up in the air. So I'll get set up, I'll get this undone, and once I'm ready, the whole thing will lower out. All right, I'll quickly pull this console out just to make it a bit easier. In the back storage compartment here, there's just a couple 6mm bolts, so a 10mm socket. Just undo them. Now, I don't have to take that completely out because I've got it back far enough to get to these bolts at the front. So these just have a couple plastic clips that clip down and in here. And because this has been in and out a few times, the actual plastic retaining clips are a bit broken. That's why it didn't click off, but normally they'd just be, you just get under the front of it, lift it up, and then it pops those two clips off. Now these normally have two Phillips head screws either side, but this one's actually missing. Just get the shift knob, unscrew them. Off she comes. Just like that. And then under your vinyl, there's just 6 Phillips screws you got under. Now I'm just going to get in here with the compressor. There's a bit of dust on top. I'll blow all that off, give it a good clean up, and then I'll undo these shifters, lift them out, and then when it goes to dropping the box out, there'll be nothing to catch on. First hot day down here. It's about 34 degrees and I'm absolutely sweating my ring off. Some of these bolts are a little bit longer, so I'm just laying them in the order that I pulled them out from. 4 longer ones are from the normal shifter side and the 2 shorter ones are from on the right hand side of where the 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive lever is. See, I might just leave that on there for now. I'll just loosely put the bolts back in it. I'll try. If it will drop down with the shifter still on there, that's a win. If it doesn't, then I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. All right, we'll get the car up in the air and I'll start undoing everything. Before I lift the car up, I'm probably going to have to loosen off the starter motor to get the trans out because it's bolted into the actual bell housing of the transmission. So I'm just going to undo the battery just so that when I go to pull that out, I'm not going to short it out against anything. So I've already had this car lifted up, so I checked where all the hoist mounting points were, but good idea if you're using a hoist, just lift it up until it's on the first stops. Just give the car a little bit of a shake. And you'll know that it's nice and solid, it's not going to tip or anything like that, so you've got your balance point right. Alright, I'm happy to go up now. You can take this front wheel off because it will make it easier to get into where the starter motor is. That makes it a lot more accessible getting up and into here. So the starter motor sits here, it's got a couple bolts going back that way, so I'll just have to undo them. And then I've got to work my way around and undo all the bell housing bolts. So I'm just undoing the front drive shaft that goes between the transfer case and the diff at the moment. I'll get this undone, I'll get it out of the way. So these are pretty tight, so I'm just using 2 spanners. Putting a bit of weight between them with my hand and then just giving the one on the nut a bit of a hit and it just cracks them. As I take bolts out, just so I remember where they go, I can sit them there and I can just write slave cylinder on the bench and then I'm not going to forget. all the bell housing bolts out. They can be a bit of a pain to get up and around to get to them, but the other way you can do it is undo the transmission. If I couldn't have got to the top ones, I would have undone the transmission and lent the whole thing back, because it just gives you a bit more clearance to get over the top, but that wasn't too bad. Now I've done that, I've just got to undo the main tail shaft going back to the diff. I'm probably not going to pull it out completely, I'm just going to have it loosely so that when I lower this down, I can just slide the whole thing back, but not actually take it completely out. And then once I've done that, then I can start undoing transmission cross member. You ready? I'll keep going. Now I might have bumped, either left the handbrake on or bumped it into gear, because I can't turn that over. So I'll jump on a ladder and sort that out. There we go, that was the handbrake. So I've got the car up a tiny bit too high for this jack, so I'll lower it down, I'll lower the jack down, I'll lower the hoist down a bit, and then I'll re-jack it back up again. Give that a try. These chains aren't even long enough to go over the transmission, so I'm just going to get them out of my way. I'll leave the side pieces on. Just going to go back up a bit higher, get everything loose, and then I'll come back down again. I'd ordered another one of these mounts, so this is the back mount for the transfer case. That's all that's left of it. So good thing I got a new one going in. Ended up, I couldn't get it out with the shifter still on, so I've unbolted the shifter and I've lifted that out from the top. There's actually two more bolts that I had to undo that you couldn't get from the top. So I ended up just lowering the transmission down a bit, getting to them from the side, and then I just popped the shifter out, left it in the cab. So now I can slide this back and drop it out. Alright, I'll wheel this out of the way so I can get the clutch out now. And I didn't like the chains that come with it weren't long enough, so I've just put a ratchet strap around the whole thing just to stop it falling off. And these are the wires, they just go into little clips on the side of the transmission, so I've unplugged them just to get them out of the way. And then as you can see, there's a bit of an oil leak coming from the engine, I'd say. What a mess. Let's get this thing cleaned up. Might give it a spray with degreaser and just let it soak. I wonder if the fact is that it was slipping because there was so much oil and crap sitting in the clutch, because this is an absolute mess. This clutch is absolutely cooked. It's pretty well down to the rivets. And she's got pretty hot as well. All these springs are loose. So definitely overdue for a new one. We've got alignment tool, spigot bearing, just a little bit of grease. New throw out bearing. Give these a good clean up and then we can throw them in. Just giving this, I actually took the bell housing off just to give it a bit of a clean because it was absolutely filthy. Soaked it in some degreaser, gave it a hit with the high pressure washer. It's come out much better. So I'll chuck in this new throw out bearing, and I've just got, this is the grease that comes with it. So on the clutch fork pivot point, there's a bit of grease on there, bit of grease where the throw out bearing sits. Greased up. Slide the clutch fork in, that's just got a little locator on it. These throw out bearings, that's the face there that goes against your pressure plate, so that's got to face towards the clutch. It's just got some little retaining clips. A little bit more grease on that. Next on the to-do list is I've got to get the old spigot bearing out. So I've got a bit of a slide hammer set up. I'm going to try that first. If that doesn't work, I'm going to resort to either putting some grease in behind it and tapping it out, or there's a couple of different ways to do it, but I'll try with the slide hammer first because that's normally the easiest. If that doesn't work, then I'll go to the next. So close. There we go. Right, I'll get the new one put in there. So you can get actual proper bearing press kits, but normally what I do is I just try and find a socket that is just pretty well the same size, but just slightly smaller, and then use that to drive it in. I'll just get it started with the soft hammer. Right, I'll give my hands a really good clean up before I touch this clutch assembly, just so I don't want to get grease on the clutch plate. I'll give everything a good wipe down with some brake cleaner, and then it's ready to drop in. Now let's go get it on the car. So these alignment tools have a little bit of play in them, so up and down. So what I'll do is I'll just go hard one way, hard the other way, and then I'll just go in the middle. At least then I know when we go to put the transmission on, it should go on pretty easily. See, I can pull that in and out nice and easily. There's no drag on it. So hopefully the transmission should drop in easily. Before I go too much higher, I'm probably going to get all this wiring plugged back in. It'll be much easier while it's still at this height. Got my trusty Triton here behind me. It's now down off the hoist. So I ended up getting the transmission back in off camera. So it did fight me a fair bit towards the end to be able to get it all to line up. The way I went about it, I ended up being able to get it close enough to be able to get the 2 lower bell housing bolts in and just started a couple turns. Once I'd done that, I managed to be able to wriggle it around, get it over the dowels, and it pretty well fell into place. So that was a win. Got everything bolted up, tested it all, taking it for a test drive, and the clutch seems a lot better now, so definitely happy with that. So if you're looking at doing a clutch in an MN Triton, it is a pretty straightforward job. There's obviously just a couple little tricks. One thing I'd probably do different if I was doing it again is I'd undo the shifter, but I'd get the top bolts undone first, and then I'd undo the transmission cross member and just lower the transmission down enough to be able to get your hand in through the top and get the last couple bolts out. Once you've got those, so there's 8 bolts in total on the top where the shifter bolts through to the transmission, get those ones undone, get the shifter up out of the way, and then the whole thing will pretty well, you're not going to have the shifter holding you up. So that sort of was a bit painful when I was doing it, but yeah, if you're doing it yourself, definitely recommend just to undo the ones you can get first, lower the transmission down a bit, get the other ones out, and then get the shifter out of your way. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate the support. If you're looking at getting a couple new shed shirts, we've got some of these available on our website. We'll leave the link in the description, but we've got about 3 or 4 different designs now. But yeah, if you're looking for a little Christmas present for yourself or one of your mates, jump on, have a look. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.